The conclusive battle between Universe 7 and Universe 11 continues as the final 3 minutes draw closer to zero as Jiren begins to slowly reveal his true power in his attempts of defeating Goku, Vegeta, and Frieza, as the fate of both universes are on the line. But with the return of Ultra Instinct Goku, the question now is how will it all end as Goku and Jiren look to close out the Tournament of Power. What is going on, Dragon Ball fans? Welcome to my Dragon Ball Super episode 128 breakdown review entitled Noble Pride to the End, Vegeta Falls, leading into the next exciting episode of Dragon Ball Super episode 129, which promises to bring us an action-packed episode involving Ultra Instinct Goku having a battle against Jiren, as we also come to the understanding that Goku will in fact master Ultra Instinct in this final battle, in which we are going to be discussing on my predictions video later on, and further analyzing Dragon Ball Super episode 129's preview and making the assumption as to what may happen in the upcoming episode. But for Dragon Ball Super episode 128, as good as the episode was, there's always something within the episode that makes you question the overall direction, and this episode, I believe, especially after having to watch it again in full detail, does raise more questions than answers, especially for Vegeta's character. And again, if you guys like the Dragon Ball content that I provide on this channel, then make sure you guys punch that subscribe button with notifications enabled to be the first to receive all the latest in Dragon Ball content and be a part of the Dragon Ball squad. And also don't forget to follow me on these social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, to stay connected with me at all times, hashtag Dragon Ball Squad, as Dragon Ball Super episode 128 is now officially in the history books. And with that being said, certain events occurred in this episode which will later further solidify the events of what's going to happen towards the end of the Tournament of Power, as we now have Ultra Instinct Goku having to fight Jiren in the finale, which doesn't come as a surprise because this was something that was foreshadowed ever since the beginning of this tournament, in seeing the way Goku stared down Jiren and having to witness them battle during Dragon Ball Super episode 109 and 110, and the overall build up ever since those events in seeing the inevitable rematch. And now we're going to be getting Ultra Instinct Goku versus Jiren, except this time the only difference is that we're going to be seeing Goku master this ability in fighting Jiren at full power. Now, the events of Dragon Ball Super episode 128 pretty much solidified Vegeta's end, and it's because of said reasons that I do believe that this entire time they could have done more with Vegeta, even though a lot of us, including myself, never really expected to see Vegeta survive through Jiren's onslaught in Dragon Ball Super episode 122. We saw how nevertheless in this episode Vegeta displayed tenacity and willpower, unlike Goku, who was pretty much down and out for most of the episode, and it really boggles my mind how Goku has plot armor on his side to solidify his position in being in the finale, whereas Vegeta, even though he is in the same state of exhaustion as Goku, still manages to conjure up the willpower to continue the fight, even though he could barely even go Super Saiyan. Now, I do believe that a lot of people expected more from Vegeta, and you have to give Vegeta respect because aside from Android 17, the other MVP of this entire tournament was definitely Vegeta, no question about that. We saw his overall direction and his lead building up in the tournament ever since his minor roles in fighting fodder characters, leading up until this very point in time where he's fighting the strongest people in the tournament themselves. That includes Hakai Shintopo and even Jiren. So in regards to this episode, what I really did enjoy was seeing the emotional side of Vegeta, because by the end he was eliminated, but not without putting up a fight. And even Jiren took into account in not only antagonizing Vegeta and telling him how worthless it was, how it was going to be over, and Vegeta having to reminisce back when he first met Kaba during the Champa arc, in which led to Vegeta later speaking to Kaba during the Tournament of Power and telling him about the wish and how he was going to bring Kaba back. And then we even go back to when Vegeta was in the hyperbolic time chamber when he was with Beerus, in which more or less brought me back to the era when Vegeta fought Kid Buu, because during that time we saw when Vegeta was down on his luck, he literally was rendered immobile in both cases against Jiren and Buu, and in both cases we see him make the comeback. Unlike how we saw during the events of Kid Buu, we saw how Vegeta was able to stand up during this fight, but by the end, what I really did appreciate from Vegeta's character was the fact that all it took Jiren was one punch to ring out Vegeta, as Vegeta gave it his all after unleashing a final flash, and as Vegeta was plummeting on down into the void, the first thing he thought about was Bulma, his family, family, he thought about everyone he truly cared about, and then he began to shed tears. And it's because of this you can understand and gravitate towards his emotional side in realizing that Vegeta had literally gave everything he had in this tournament and it still wasn't enough. And as he was plummeting on down into the void, he gave Goku whatever remaining energy he could, and I feel like that right there was such an establishing ground for Vegeta, because this entire tournament he never once helped out Goku up until this very point, where even during the events of the Genki Dama, Vegeta was literally one of the only ones, if not the only one, that never gave Goku any energy. And now, since he realized that Goku was the only one left, he gave him energy in order to continue the fight as he plummeted on down into the void. And we saw how Kuririn and Gohan were quick to respond to Vegeta by giving him senzu beans, and everybody, including Whis and Beerus, everyone was proud of Vegeta as to how far he's come. And even though he was very arrogant to acknowledge this, he knows that in his heart of hearts, Goku was the only one that could get the job done in saving everybody, and that's why he did what he did, because he knew as he was fighting Jiren, he was basically fighting a losing battle. But before we dive any further, I do want to go on ahead and give you guys my overall opinion as to what I think about this Mastered Ultra Instinct concept, in the idea that I am not a fan of recoloring. I do not like the idea that this Mastered Ultra Instinct concept looks just like Super Saiyan God, except only with silver hair. It clearly shows that Toriyama back in the day had the intent, as I stated in my previous video, where he wanted to incorporate a Super Saiyan white, a Super Saiyan silver grayish like concept, but during the time of the Goku Black arc, he wasn't able to do so because it would come directly in conflict with the main antagonist, that being Zamasu. So instead, Toriyama decided to keep that away in saving and preserving that look for another time, and that time having to be now. So I don't really like the overall design. It looks more or less very simple because we just got Ultra Instinct, so I don't see it to where they had to change his hair color. Even though to an extent he does look pretty cool, I am not a fan of recoloring. If you look at simply the adaptation and the evolvement between Super Saiyan 3 going into Super Saiyan 4, there is a clear-cut evolutionary difference in the Saiyan biology in terms of hair, in terms of eyes, in terms of muscle mass. And here, having to see the resurgence of Ultra Instinct, I didn't really have an issue with that, because that was foreshadowed ever since the beginning that this was going to be the be-all end-all fight. And I loved how Goku was very serious against Jiren, even though it contradicts his role in the tournament, because the whole time Goku's been goofing off and pretty much being brain dead as he was fighting other competitors. But all of a sudden, when he taps back into Ultra Instinct, he seems to take everything a bit more serious than how he did before. So having to reintroduce Ultra Instinct to me didn't come in the form of a surprise, but I think that Vegeta should have gotten more in this fight with Jiren than how we saw. Even though he was battered, he was injured, there was nothing more for him to do. I feel like all the time when it comes down to it, Goku is the only person that is left with handling the situation and defeating the main enemy. This has happened time and time again before, and it would have been refreshing to see what if Vegeta were to do something drastic and gaining some sort of a power increase, even stemming far and beyond what we saw with his Ultra Blue form. It would have been really awesome to see. But I do enjoy the overall concept of Vegeta having to think about Bulma and hearing her voice, and even going as far as giving Goku energy. But the one thing I will also say that I did not enjoy was the fact that Jiren had every chance in the world to wring everybody out if he truly wanted to, but instead he continued to talk down to Vegeta, he continued to talk down to Goku, and I felt like there really was no placement in him doing that, because it more or less took away from the overall intense atmosphere and the tension that was building up, because Vegeta, the whole time he was trying to fight back against Jiren, Jiren kept talking about how only the strong survive and how much strength matters, and even trash talking Goku about trust. And this episode did not include Frieza in the least, and it kind of makes you wonder as to what Frieza is up to, where he is, what he's doing, because the whole time as you're wondering about Frieza and where he might be, you don't really have a clue, because he's being kept in the shadows, he's being hidden somewhere, you know, for him to pretty much stay on the wayside until Goku has his fight with Jiren. But even as we go into Dragon Ball Super episode 129, it's kind of hard to even fathom Jiren still holding his power back, which is why I do believe that during episode 129, we are going to see Jiren use more of his full power against Ultra Instinct Goku, especially what we saw during the episode preview. But I think that this episode, as many people people want to criticize it and saying it was boring or it was all over the place, I felt as if from Vegeta's point of view, it made sense for him to be as emotional as he was, because we saw the same thing occur once before during the Kid Buu fight, but here the stakes are much more higher than how you would normally have it, to where Kid Buu just wanted to destroy the Earth and destroy everything else within the universe. Here you have the entire universe being erased, with everybody you know having to go down with you. So I loved how Vegeta's emotional factor came into this. Again, I did not understand the logic behind Jiren in terms of having him sit by very casually and idly while we see Goku get back up and fight Jiren, even though I do believe that Jiren probably thought he had the fight in the bag, considering the fact that Goku had no energy left and he couldn't even think for himself in the idea that Goku was going to go back into Ultra Instinct. The one thing that really took away was nobody in this episode even remotely mentioned Frieza once, because that's going to be the entire narrative behind the episode, is focusing on Goku and Jiren and getting our attention away from what Frieza is doing. And this is why I believe that Frieza is going to play a huge role in this, because I think that with Frieza having to be foreshadowed in the background, just looming somewhere, there is a high possible chance for Frieza to jump in doing something against Jiren, in doing something against Goku. So it is likely that going into Dragon Ball Super episode 129 that Frieza may not be involved as much, because they really want to focus in promoting the Goku versus Jiren fight more than anything else. But I also feel like as we go into episode 130, 131, we're bound to see more of Frieza. But the thing is, he was only showcased once in this episode when Goku was looking back on his team, Piccolo, Tien, Vegeta. He even thought about Frieza. So I thought that that was very interesting, but I do think that, again, based on plot armor alone, Goku's being given everything, and I understand that Vegeta, just like how Frieza gave him energy before, you know, he handed off some power for Goku to stand back up, and I get that, but for Goku to casually go back into Ultra Instinct and then mastering it, it's going to be interesting to see the way he, he masters the power, because there is no indication or even any suggestion that there is something of a mastery to this form, but now it looks like there clearly is. So what I want to know from you guys is, what are your overall thoughts on Vegeta's elimination? I mean, as I said before many times, if there was ever a time for them to introduce Vegito, Gogeta, this would have been it, especially if they never did it prior. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, they never introduced Vegito during the Merged Zamasu story. This would have been the perfect time to do so. But since Vegeta is gone, I do feel like from a character standpoint, he's been written differently than how he was in Dragon Ball Z, to pretty much be the bitch that always gets beat down. But here, he got back up after every single episode. Every single episode that ever went by, we saw Vegeta get in there, and he pretty much gave it his all, and, fighting until he pretty much had nothing left going. And to that, I do believe that everyone needs to give Vegeta some respect in the idea that he came in there, he tried, and he gave it his all, and he went down swinging. So, but in the end, I would like to get your thoughts down in the comment section below. What are your overall thoughts on the concept of Mastered Ultra Instinct Goku having to battle against Jiren? What are your overall thoughts on Dragon Ball Super episode 128? Would you guys say, in your opinion, that episode 128 was better or worse than episode 127? Let me know your thoughts on Vegeta. Let me know your overall thoughts as to who you guys believe is going to win between Mastered Ultra Instinct Goku and Jiren in the finale. Thank you all so very much for watching. If you guys are new to this channel, don't forget to punch that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. That way you all can be notified whenever a brand new video is posted onto this channel. If you guys have not checked out my previous updates on the Mastered Ultra Instinct concept, be sure to go on ahead and check those out. Tune back in for the predictions video. This episode, I think, was really good, and it's really hard to criticize all of these previous episodes in a negative light. Unless you're a negative person yourself, you have to look at it from a structural standpoint in terms of writing, choreography, art, animation, and logic. And there were certain things in this episode, as did many others, that lacked in those departments. But overall, this was an enjoyable episode. But the only thing that took away was the clear plot armor on Goku's side that made everything feel that much more predictable as we neared the end. So let me know your thoughts down below, guys, if you guys agree or disagree. Thank you all so very much for watching. Tune back in for more. It's going to be one hell of a week. There are going to be 2 separate weeks where Dragon Ball Super will not be airing. I will keep you guys notified on Twitter, so make sure you guys are following me on the Twitter platform. Thank you all once again. Tune back in for more, and I'll be seeing you all down in the comment section below. Cue my outro, bitch!